Biker from Miami original.
Welcome to the HE3.
Mountain time. A disaster of unknown type has occurred at the Black-Mesa Research Facility. Several other locations in the surrounding areas of Black-Mesa, New Mexico. For your own safety, an immediate evacuation order has been issued to the entire state of New Mexico. To all residents of New Mexico and surrounding areas, do not remain in your homes. Seek shelter at your nearest military zone outside the state of New Mexico.
May 16th, 2000X. It's a cool 93 degrees Fahrenheit. News channels across America begin their morning broadcast. A lunar eclipse is seen from the Americas, all the way to Africa and all the way to Europe. The Los Angeles Lakers get eliminated from their 2002 to 2003 playoffs, losing to the San Antonio Spurs in Los Angeles. The United States government declared the end of combat operations in Iraq, and continue training the Marines for urban environments. That, or you believe it takes place in December 2000. This game isn't known for its accuracy when it comes to the date. But deep within an old decommissioned ICBM launch silo, everything would change that morning. Black-Mesa, New Mexico. I was there, dude, and it sucked!
8:47 a.m.
Dr. Gordon Freeman is late for work. Again. Honestly, I don't understand what Kleiner sees in that boy. Anyway, it's a pleasant 68 degrees within the transit line. Today's the big day, anti-mass spectrometer day. Brilliant new specimen is ready to be analyzed. And since Dr. Freeman's running late, it gives the science team in Sector C more time to prepare. During their little preparation, Dr. Vance is contacted by a mysterious man in a blue suit, who tells him to prepare for unforeseen consequences. Not understanding what the man in the suit said, Vance didn't warn any of his colleagues about the so-called unforeseen consequences, leaving Dr. Keller to allow the increase of the anti-mass spectrometer's power, as the sample they were using was swapped out last minute, and it was apparently the purest sample they'd seen yet. At around 9 o'clock-ish, Gordon arrives to the Sector C Anomalous Materials Labs, dons his hazardous environment suit, Mark IV, and proceeds down to the test chamber.
Hello, Dr. Cross. Hello, Dr. Cross. Hello, Dr. Cross. No. Close yourself in the skirt. Ah, Dr. Cross, fancy seeing you.
Hey, watch it!
Gordon greets his team, Kleiner and Vance included, and around 9:30, Freeman, along with Doctors Cross and Green, on the lower floor, enter the anti-mass spectrometer to begin the analysis.
Testing. Everything seems to be in order.
All right, Gordon. Your suit should keep you comfortable through all this. If you would be so good as to climb up and start the rotors, that way we can bring the anti-mass spectrometer to 80% and hold it there until the carrier arrives. Very good. We'll take it from here.
Power to stage 1 emitters in 3, 2, 1. I'm seeing predictable phase arrays. Stage 2 emitters activating now.
Gordon, we cannot predict how long the system can operate at this level, nor how long the reading will take. Please work as quickly as you can.
Overhead capacitors to 105%. It's probably not a problem. Probably. But I'm showing a small discrepancy in... Well, no. It's well within acceptable bounds here. Sustaining sequence.
We've just been informed that the sample is ready, Gordon. It should be coming up to you at any moment. Look to the delivery system for your specimen. Standard insertion for non-standard specimen. Get away from the plane! Oh my God! Shut it down!
Shutting down!
Someone get him out of there! Shut it down!
It's not shutting down!
Move down!
At around 9:30 and 10 a.m., the resonance cascade occurs, causing an influx of alien invaders from Zen, who are seeking refuge on Earth, as well as causing facility-wide damages along with major power outages in the surrounding areas. First responders being Black-Mesa's own security team, who were mostly confused by the situation, as I don't think being ripped in half by aliens was a part of their training course.
Aw, shit, here they come!
To the outside world at the time, it just seemed like it was simply a major power outage caused by the facility, and with Black Mesa being a heavily fortified area, local authorities such as police and fire departments, as well as any reporters and news teams were not permitted to enter the facility at the time, with the Black Mesa staff being completely alone in the first few hours of the incident, and with the phone lines and communication systems being out, any chance of alerting outside authorities would be difficult. It is so over Black Mesa, bros. The first efforts to alert the outside world would be from Dr. Rosenberg. What a nerd. With help from Doctors Crossing Green. After waking up in the anti-mass spectrometer's basement, they made their way out to the facility through Sector A's hazard course, starring Gina Cross, of course. For those unfamiliar with the timeline, it's important to note that this is around the time when Gordon wakes up after the resonance cascade. Upon reaching the surface at around 10:30 and fighting through the alien resistance, Cross, Green, and Rosenberg managed to reach Black Mesa's uplink satellite control room to get in contact with the military and alert them to the ongoing situation, and thus in between 10:30 and 11 a.m, the first of 3 emergency notices were sent out to anyone within the facility's radius.
The following message is transmitted at the request of local authorities. At 9:47 a.m. Mountain Time, a disaster. First aid kit, flashlights with extra batteries, and battery-powered radios. Follow local evacuation routes, which have been marked by local authorities, and only use one vehicle. Do not return to the warning area until the all clear has been given. If you are not in the evacuation zone, stay where you are. If you are within the evacuation area and have no transportation, locate your nearest police department or military officer. Do not use telephones or cell phones, except in the case of emergencies. Stay tuned to local news media outlets for further details and information on this situation.
An evacuation order was issued. Anyone within 75 miles of Black Mesa were to pack up and leave. This image here shows how large that evacuation zone was. Local authorities began blocking roads leading into Black Mesa and turning away any news teams reporting on the incident, only giving subtle information about what is going on as to not spread panic.
Nicole, we are right off the intersection between 68 and 518 here at Taos, just outside of the University of New Mexico. In fact, there was a bus of students who were heading towards Black-Mesa for a one-day tour, but were turned down by state troopers blocking the road. I was not permitted to film towards that direction and was told that if I did, our camera would be confiscated. The officers refused to talk with us since. I have absolutely no idea what's happening. We'll stay around here to see if there are any further updates, but for now, this is all we know.
In response to the ongoing situation, the government deployed the United States Marine Corps Hazardous Environment Combat Unit to quarantine and lock down the site, eradicating any and all alien life, as local authorities and National Guard teams began the evacuation process for civilians outside of Black Mesa. You may have noticed that the government seemed to be aware of the extent of the disaster, as they state the exact time when the resonance cascade occurred, that being 9:47 a.m. It's almost like someone had been feeding them information. If you've read Adrian Shepard's journal from the Opposing Force Instruction Manual, it is revealed that the government was in fact aware that something would happen at Black Mesa, but when and what and how were not known. Hence why you see how prepared the Marines are at the start of Opposing Force. Timeline-wise, the arrival of the Marines happens around when Gordon arrives in Sector D, the office complex, where he hears the EAS alert for the first time. The Marines begin to flood Black Mesa in the attempt to overwhelm the alien forces. Civilians and news teams begin noting their increasing military presence en route to the facility, with government forces trying to dampen the concern regarding military deployments to a nuclear disaster. Many of Black Mesa staff were relieved to finally get their long-awaited evacuation, with many of them running headfirst towards Marines' positions, unaware of what the Marines actually had planned for them.
Oh, rescued at last! Thank God you're here!
In the attempt to contain the disaster, the government decided that the best course of action was to completely cover up the alien invasion, viewing Black Mesa and its employees, especially Gordon, as responsible for the deaths that had happened up to that point, as technically they are. Although it's unsure who gave the authority to execute Black Mesa's staff, it is most likely that our mutual friend was involved in the decision. The Marines begin rounding up Black Mesa personnel, ensuring that none of them could escape to potentially spread word of what is happening to the outside world, and judging by the types of things the science team have been working on, any government official would want to keep it under wraps, especially now that it's gone tits up in the last 2 hours.
I'm not so sure we should go to the surface. What if the world finds out what we're doing down here?
It is most likely at this time that the government was intentionally keeping the phone and communication lines out to ensure their goals of covering up the incident. Upon learning the government's true plans for the facility, the science team in Sector F's Lambda complex began looking for ways to stop the alien invasion from growing further, enlisting the help of Gordon, most likely transmitted through radio as the phone lines, as stated prior, were still down. On the topic, at this point of the incident, it's important to note, it's not known the amount of technology that's operational again after the incident, but it's shown that the majority of Black Mesa's power is back up at the time, such as the lighting and the door controls. But it's also noted that the Black Mesa security cameras, which are most likely wired as to work without needing to be connected to the facility's Wi-Fi, are still operational. It's unknown if Black Mesa's private Ethernet would still be working, however, as we never see throughout any of the games that such a thing would still be working, but it was most likely disconnected upon the arrival of the government forces, if it was even operational to begin with. At this time, the Zen forces begin to up their efforts, teleporting in more aliens into the Black Mesa area, such as Vortigaunt slaves, headcrabs, bull squids, etc., but now additionally sending in their main attack force in more numbers, such as their genetically modified alien grunts and Manta Ray aircrafts, which caused more casualties among Black Mesa personnel, and now among the new arriving military forces. In response, the Marines, with assistance from the United States Air Force, begin conducting airstrikes on the Black Mesa area, causing the aliens and Black Mesa staff to retreat further into the facility, notably Gordon, who has to go through the old decommissioned rail system in the outskirts of Sector D's high storage facility. At this time, with the increasing alien presence, with some even appearing outside of Black Mesa grounds, the government issued a new emergency notice.
issued for the Black-Mesa area. In the interest of public safety, all residents within a 150-mile radius of Black-Mesa, New Mexico, are advised to evacuate the area immediately. Take only essential supplies and a battery-powered radio. Do not use more than one vehicle for traveling. Follow local evacuation routes, which have been marked by local authorities. If you are within the evacuation area and have no transportation, locate your nearest police department. If you begin experiencing a fever, coughing, nausea, dizziness, muscle ache, pneumonia, hair loss, or any such similar ailments, please contact your nearest disease control center immediately, as these symptoms may be related to recent events. Stay tuned to local media outlets for further information on this ongoing emergency.
The previous evacuation order was to be expanded to 150 miles, double the distance of the last. This image here shows how big that is, nearly half the size of the entire state. More and more media outlets began picking up on the incident, with some doubting that it is merely just a nuclear disaster, but since no one can get in contact with Black-Mesa personnel, and the government drip-feeding them information, there was no way to really know the extent of what was happening.
Mr. Secretary, can you just clarify on the reasons for a military response to the incident? The public is informed that this is merely an accident.
As you know, with some accidents, there requires a greater caution in response. The Black-Mesa Research Facility is a vital component to the defense industry, and for that matter, I'm afraid I cannot disclose the nature of the incident as of now.
Thanks a lot, Black-Mesa.
It's also stated that residents outside of Black-Mesa are to contact their local CDC office if they begin experiencing symptoms such as fever, coughing, nausea, etc. These symptoms are related to radiation poisoning, hinting that there were radiation leaks caused by the resonance cascade. Enough for the government to issue a warning about it, that or it's simply just a way for the government to convince those who were in doubt about the nuclear disaster plot. The Marines also began actively searching for Gordon for fighting back against their attack, who at this point in the story is in the Blast Pit chapter, where he fights the tentacles within Silo D-01, which was an old ICBM rocket engine test area. If you really think about it, the Marines who believed Gordon to be a saboteur of sorts had managed to figure out who he was and how to track him down, which is information they most likely obtained from interrogating Gordon's colleagues, which is why they were always able to find Gordon throughout the game. So around the time Gordon defeats the tentacles and makes his way further into Sector D's decommissioned areas, the Houge managed to figure out where he was en route to, but their efforts were thwarted when a Xenian known as the Gargantua showed up and absolutely obliterated them with his giant incendiary jets. This heartless beast must be destroyed, which is left up to Gordon. So after reconnecting the power to this abandoned rail line, Gordon lures this vile creature into a power grid, frying the monstrosity in an electrical fiery death. This opens up the way to the old decommissioned rail system, where Gordon finds a security guard who tells him that one of his scientist pals said to give him a message. He reveals that the Lambda team's plan was to reverse the resonance cascade's effect by using a satellite delivery rocket to hopefully close the rift between Earth and Zen. A few scientists were able to set up the delivery rocket in Black-Mesa's high-altitude launch center in Sector E, but sometime during the initial Houge invasion, the government locked down the airspace to ensure nothing got in or out of Black-Mesa, including the rocket, which was eventually lifted by Dr. Cross and Dr. Green, who had to fight their way through the Marines' forces within the Black-Mesa air control in order to lift the lockdown, which would allow the rockets to be launched via the launch center's control panel, which at the time was swarming with Marines. I should mention also that during this time, it's revealed that the Marines began systematically executing and locking up Black-Mesa personnel within Black-Mesa's train yard, in hopes they could locate Dr. Rosenberg. It's that nerd again. as they believe if someone as high up in Black-Mesa's science team, such as Rosenberg, was to escape from the facility, the world outside of Black-Mesa would inevitably question him regarding the incident, where Black-Mesa's more questionable research, as well as the government cover-up, would be spilled. But he was ultimately freed by Barney Calhoun, who, might I add, still owes Dr. Freeman that beer. Back to Gordon. He traverses through the abandoned rail track, reaching Sector E's doorstep, where he fights through the Houge station there, coming up against heavy resistance as they knew he was nearby. Reaching the control room, there are two Marines discussing the nature of their assignment, with them showing resentment for killing Black-Mesa personnel.
Monsters, hell yeah. But civilians? What is this damn operation anyway?
It's actually shown throughout that a lot of Marines weren't comfortable with their assignment. This operation again is most likely caused by the G-Man, in some capacity, as a part of his employment strategy. This moment adds some humanity to the Marines that you don't really see outside of opposing force. Anyway, Gordon kills them. He then reaches the control panel and launches the rocket, and as it reaches the upper atmosphere, it activates a satellite, which at the time closed the portals, but proved unsuccessful in the long run, as the portals were being held open by a single powerful being on the other side. Upon noticing the airspace lockdown being lifted, and the launching of the rocket into orbit, the government goes on high alert, and it's around this time the CIA gets involved, deploying a Black Ops team into the Black-Mesa facility during the night. Real BikerFromMiami fans will understand this reference.
I understood that reference.
Their goal at the time was damage control and the confiscation of Black-Mesa assets, such as test specimens and alien tech, ensuring any evidence of alien involvement was wiped clear, eliminating all who got in their way, even the Marines. Typical glowies! Outside of Black-Mesa, the cool nighttime breeze blew over the New Mexico sands, but evacuations were still underway, with even more roads being shut down as local authorities and National Guard teams create a new perimeter around Black-Mesa. Civilians begin noting the strange sightings near the Black-Mesa area, including noticing the rocket launch, and despite government efforts, they weren't able to cover it up, as it could be seen for miles. Covering up an event like the rocket launch would be difficult. Unlike the deep secrecy surrounding Black-Mesa, a rocket launch is not something that can easily be hidden. Despite the government's efforts to suppress news and information about it, the launch inevitably sparked curiosity about what was truly happening at Black-Mesa. However, at that moment, the potential threat of nuclear fallout from the disaster overshadowed any concerns about the rocket itself. But even so, there would still be speculations among civilians, as the sudden appearance of a rocket launch would be too strange to ignore. While the media focused on the immediate dangers of the radiation and the evacuations, pockets of the public began to wonder why a rocket was launched at such a critical moment. Perhaps some civilians would think it was a missile of sorts, while others may have thought it to be a last-ditch effort from Black-Mesa to contain a nuclear disaster. We don't hear much about the rocket past this point, its only other mentions being in Half-Life Decay's final mission, where Cross and Green have to defend a displacement beacon, which assists the satellite in closing the rift, and in Half-Life 2 Episode 2, where the Resistance hopes to use the satellite to close the Combine portal, but I'm jumping a bit ahead here. Back within Black-Mesa, around the time of the Apprehension chapter, the Marines drastically upped their efforts and become more aggressive in their domination of the Black-Mesa facility, unaware at the time of the government's new plans for the cover-up, in this case the Black Ops. It is revealed that the Marines managed to pitch into Gordon's HGV Mark IV suit, using its built-in tracking devices.
Gordon Freeman, it is you, isn't it? The science team has been tracking your progress with the Black-Mesa security system. Unfortunately, so has the military. That suit of yours is full of tracking devices,
which originally were designed so that relay teams can stay connected with each other while in hazardous environments. As stated by the scientist Gordon comes across, the Marines obtained the tracking signal by using Black-Mesa's security system. The only other mention of this outside of this scene is from a cut level from Half-Life Decay, where Dr. Cross, Dr. Green, and Dr. Keller travel to Black-Mesa's central transit hub, where they are directed to the central security station by a security guard, where he mentions the ability to track the HEB suits.
The central security station is right over here. Follow me. My access code should open this and unlock any door around the central transit hub. From this room, we can monitor transmissions, check up on the transit lines, open and close all the security gates at the hub, Heck, even track HEV suit movement. See, here are your signals here, and there's another signal over there. Must be that Freeman guy.
Assuming this is still canon, this would be how the government tracked Gordon down. That or they externally tracked it, which would be possible given their familiarity with the platform, as some units in the Marine Corps received the powered combat vests, while unconfirmed were most likely designed by Black-Mesa. Around this time, early in the morning, the Xenian attacks didn't let up. In fact, they grew larger and more coordinated, with teleportations becoming increasingly strategic. As mentioned earlier, the rocket launch only managed to temporarily close the portals, as a single powerful being was keeping them open. Without the interference from the military, the portals might have been sealed off much sooner, but now, with more time to gain control over the Black-Mesa facility, the Xenians had established a strong grasp on Earth that seemed impossible to stop. This led the Lambda team to the realization that their only option was to send someone into Xen to shut the portal down from the other side. Naturally, this task fell to Gordon, who by this point didn't seem to have much of a problem with wiping out entire alien species. A bit later, a squad of Marines hunkered down within a surface access point located within a storage hangar on the outskirts of Sector E, where they hoped to ambush Freeman, who arrived shortly later, but is ambushed instead by a team of Black Ops, who catched up to him before the Marines could, sealing off the surface access. The Black Ops, equipped with their suppressed Glock 17s and Aperture Science branded long fall boots, kills a helpless security guard in front of Gordon. Then they silently drop from the shadows above. They land in front of Gordon and unleash a burst of silenced gunfire before vanishing into the dark once more. But this is no matter for the Freeman, however, as he flawlessly kills all of the Black Ops, and then he reopens the surface access. #Total Black Op Death. It's unclear whether the Marines that were hiding were aware of the Black Ops team in the other room, as the two government groups would most likely end up fighting one another. For now, the Marines lie in wait for Freeman, and when he arrives, they move him fast, catching him off guard and knocking him out cold.
Nice hit. That's the guy? Yeah. We got him. Alright, come on, give me a hand here.
There's a continuity error here that's always bugged me about this portion of the game. Note the bright morning sky. That's all fine and dandy until you realize that we started this chapter around midnight, which unless apprehension took at least 4 or 5 hours in-universe to get through, or I could just be getting it wrong, it shouldn't be this bright at this time, but it isn't really something to get nitpicky about, especially as it's right before Gordon gets knocked out anyway. These Marines got him. They got the big bad Gordon Freeman. He's been killing their buddies. But they decide against handing him over to their command. Instead, they decide the best thing to do with one of Black-Mesa's most valuable staff members during this incident is to shoot him in the back and throw him into a trash compactor, despite the fact he's head to toe in high-impact reactive armor. The Marines leave Gordon in the trash compactor for dead, unaware that they didn't really do anything besides giving Gordon a wee nap. To think that a day prior, Gordon was merely just another scientist they had to terminate, and now he's at the top of their shit list. These Marines had the opportunity to hand him over to their command, but they decided against it. If the Marines decided that Gordon would be better off in the hands of their commanding officer, the story of Half-Life could have been a lot different. Imagine if Adrian Shepard was in the Half-Life 2 beta instead of Gordon. That would be so Drake and Diddy. Not a lot is known during this time. It's most likely with Freeman out of the way, so to speak. The Marines begin pushing further into Black-Mesa, going after more high-value targets.
You can't kill me. I'm in God mode.
Which brings us elsewhere in the facility. The Marines are closing in on an old prototype lab as they finally track down Dr. Rosenberg. By now, Rosenberg, with Barney's help, had managed to recharge the old teleportation device, which I had mentioned in the context clues. The Marines couldn't allow anyone to leave that lab, especially Rosenberg, so they had to move fast. But it was all for nothing. Rosenberg and his team managed to escape and end up on the outskirts of Black-Mesa. During the teleportation, Barney gets caught in what's known as a harmonic reflux, when you flicker in and out of reality, trapped in limbo between where you were and where you're supposed to be. While stuck, he briefly sees Gordon being dragged away by the Marines. This kind of event won't show up again till Half-Life 2, when Kleiner's teleportation malfunctions, and Gordon ends up in a similar situation as Barney. Aside from that, there's not really much to say about what happens between the end of Apprehension and the start of residue processing. Since all the main protagonists are either unconscious or have already escaped Black Mesa, it's likely that the Zen forces begin to increase in number and make more of a presence outside of the Black Mesa facility, though not enough to cause full-blown panic, just enough to raise concern, while still staying within the range of what the government can plausibly cover up. Skipping forward to when Gordon wakes up, which realistically would be around an hour or so later, sometime between 7 and 9, depending on how much time you think Gordon took through apprehension. As we don't get a specific time, but judging by how bright it is, it's most likely to take place sometime in the early to late morning. By this point, whoever wasn't bunkered down had already been evacuated past the 150-mile radius of Black Mesa by the National Guard. News teams are still being turned away at checkpoints, being left with only vague, carefully controlled information. Most evacuated people already know the story about the nuclear accident, but rumors of alien involvement quickly began to circulate, especially after the night prior, which, while unconfirmed at that moment, added to the fear and confusion as military presence grows and chaos spreads. As the disaster escalated, the Marines were ordered to take over the Advanced Biological Research Labs, which was an area the government couldn't risk leaking to the public. Their mission was clear: secure the labs at all costs, and contain any evidence of the catastrophe. Using military drones to flush out the remaining personnel, the Marines swept through the complex with brutal efficiency, clearing scientists and security forces alike. However, a small pocket of scientists managed to survive by hunkering down within a surgery hall, using the automated surgical equipment to create a deadly barrier that prevents anyone from entering.
Holy Jesus! What is that?
Around the same time, Gordon was making his way through the biological waste processing plant, which is where the Marines had left him at the end of apprehension. Also to note, the crowbar Gordon finds here has some speculation surrounding it, revolving around the idea that it's the same crowbar that Gordon had. The Marines most likely either just left it, misplaced it, or they just got themselves killed after dropping Gordon off, as how Black Mesa's source shows it. So it may be the same crowbar Gordon got from Sector C, that is, or it's just a new random crowbar. At this point, it's assumed that the rest of the Marines, meaning the ones who weren't in the know about the whole trash compactor thing, either believed he was dead or had escaped/vanished. Although this didn't stop them from at least trying to flush him out, with them executing the ABR Labs personnel in the vain hope that he would suddenly reappear, which thankfully he did.
For Gordon Freeman, all science personnel will be terminated until you surrender.
Upon reaching the ABR Labs, Gordon discovers that Black Mesa seemed to be aware of the alien life this whole time, as he sees quite a handful of alien specimens that were obviously collected prior to the resonance cascade. Quite the questionable ethics you got there, Black Mesa. A security guard encounters Gordon and alerts him about the pocket of scientists within the labs. The guard tells Gordon his best bet of getting out of the labs is to rescue the scientists so they can open the doors, using their retinal scanner access. Gordon surprises the Marines stationed in the main lobby, catching them off guard with a tranq bow, where him and the security guard see more Black Mesa's questionable experiments, which now, if Gordon really thought hard, was most likely one of the main reasons Black Mesa received such a harsh government response during the incident, among the other things I've mentioned. Learning of Freeman's new location, the Marines sent an additional TAC force to the ABR Labs, hoping to ambush Freeman yet again, who by now has acquired the XVL-1456 Tau Cannon, which he uses to destroy Zenian and military forces alike, and had made his way behind the surgical hall using a giant laser to melt the wall in order to get past the surgical equipment. Upon reaching the science team in the surgical hall, they tell Gordon that they need to get out of there before the military drones figure out where they are hiding. So with Gordon's help, they escape the surgical wing and reach the ABR Labs lobby, only to be ambushed by the Marine Corps.
Believe what you did. It's hell out there.
After Gordon fends off the Marines' ambush, the extent of the situation outside of the labs is revealed, as the military now has complete and total control of Black-Mesa, most likely due to the temporary closing of the Zen portals, but their grasp on the facility is slowly losing grip, as the Zen force are now drastically upping their numbers once more. The only exceptions to this is the Lambda labs, as they were locked down hard to ensure no one got in or out, and a few small labs scattered across the facility which wouldn't pose much of a threat in the grand scheme of things. Once again, with the sudden growth of the Zenian forces on Earth, even more aliens began appearing outside of Black-Mesa, with many more civilians noting the strange presences outside of the facility. The government is losing their grasp on the situation, and it's only a matter of time before it all boils over, especially now with more and more personnel fleeing Black-Mesa and finding ways to reach out to the local populace, where the true extent of the disaster begins to reach small pockets of people, which in this case are those who haven't evacuated past the 150-mile radius. Within the facility, to a lot of the ground forces, it was beginning to look like Black-Mesa was a lost cause, but without the orders to pull out, the Marines had to continue their fight, and now with Freeman back in the mix, it's beginning to worsen for the Marines by the moment. Gordon witnesses the gathering of a squad of Marines on Black-Mesa's hydroelectric dam, which they would have taken over during the initial stages of the invasion. It's likely they did this to control the power flow into the facility. Not that they seem to do much of a difference, however. Since I stated a while back, most of the main facility's functionality is still in working order. Upon Freeman's arrival, they sent in an APC alongside a squad of Marines to yet ambush Freeman again, but it's not successful. So they request immediate assistance from a nearby AH-64 Apache helicopter, who they probably believed would destroy Freeman, but little did they know that he, using his tau cannon, could eliminate a threat from an extreme range, which in turn causes the Apache to immediately pull out from the area, leaving Freeman alone once more. With the dam reclaimed, Gordon restores the water flow, potentially bringing additional power back online across Black-Mesa, but the impact of this isn't clearly felt. It may have possibly ceased the power outages that were still present, but as I stated prior, with most of the power seemingly already A-OK post-resonance cascade, it probably didn't make much of a difference, at least within the areas we see. It's hell on Earth within Black-Mesa, as it's now become a total war zone. Marines and Zen creatures clash relentlessly, with the little surviving scientists and personnel stuck in between the crossfire. The situation is spiraling with no signs of slowing down. And with the continuous emergence of aliens in civilian areas, the small pockets of people remaining in the evacuation zones begin to panic, causing strain on the National Guard and leaving the remaining local authorities overwhelmed. Along the more industrial areas of Black-Mesa, past Sector G's hydroelectric dam, and within Black-Mesa's topside motor pool, Freeman treks his way through the firefights and skirmishes between the opposing forces. But speaking of the opposing forces, it's around this time when Mitchell Shepard's little brother, Adrian Shepard, wakes up during opposing force, which helps with giving us more context within the government plans and actions during this time. It's shown here that a small portion of the Marines, including Adrian and his squad, never received their orders to execute Black-Mesa's staff, as they were ambushed upon their arrival, which definitely adds to the Marine struggle and confusion during these chapters. Shepard's awoken by a scientist who requests assistance, in the form of evacuation. Now remember when I said that the only exceptions to the government takeover was the Lambda labs and certain smaller labs? Well, this area here, that being a small medical ward that is in control by Black-Mesa personnel, is one of them. The personnel are unaware of the government's actions up to this point, as they've locked themselves inside, and since there was no telecommunications available, they never learned the extent of the resonance cascade.
Have you ever seen such a magnificent species?
The scientist tells Adrian that there was a radio where his squad Osprey landed, and that he could use it to call for help. Adrian agrees. Re-equipping his PCV and Alice gear, he ventures forward into the Black-Mesa complex, finding a pipe wrench on the way, which he uses to explode headcrabs into tiny little pieces. At the same time, Gordon traverses to a cliff face on the very edge of Black-Mesa, where he sees the Black-Mesa desert, and the battle on the sky around it. He sees Zen Manta Ray aircraft and American F-16s battling it out above him. Gordon takes a moment to appreciate the view before moving forward, where another Apache catches up to him. Surely this is it for the Freeman. But nope. Thanks to a conveniently placed rocket launcher, he shoots down the Apache with ease. It's shown here at the beginning of the major airstrikes over Black Mesa, with a couple of jets dropping a payload on an unidentified Black Mesa building. You can really see the damage caused by the resonance cascade on a grand scale here, compared to the shots seen within the facility. It's getting to the point where the Marines cannot handle the pressure, and around sometime at 4 o'clock, the first orders to withdrawal are issued, and the airstrikes I mentioned prior begin again in larger numbers, which brings us back within Black Mesa's grounds. Shepard reaches the crashed V-22 and finds the radio the scientist spoke about. While requesting backup, he's told about the order to pull out and to make his way to an evacuation area in order to be evacuated. While not a primary objective at this point, the government began considering the possibility of completely destroying the entire facility if it escalated further, which it did. With more of the Marines pulling out, and the less ground forces there are, it leaves a lot of the remaining Heku overwhelmed. The Marines who have already pulled out would either return to base or proceed to one of the major cities surrounding Black Mesa, such as Santa Fe and Albuquerque, supporting the National Guard with the ever-growing alien presence outside and the subtle beginning of the portal storms, which we learn about during Half-Life 2. So past this point, with what I said regarding the escalation, the government's objective shifts from containment to complete and total destruction of Black Mesa, with the government granting the CIA operatives on site to plant several thermonuclear devices throughout the facility. Although with the airstrikes and alien presence, this would be difficult to accomplish at this time. Returning to Freeman's path, the Marines, while still under heavy attack and losing troops by the second, still find it necessary to go after Gordon, still viewing him as responsible and still continuously sending more attack squads his way, which he's able to get through without issue obviously. Moving further along, the Zen attacks on Gordon feel even more coordinated and even more strategic, as it's apparent that even the Zenians are worried about Gordon's journey, as if they can't stop him from killing their forces, they would not be able to take shelter on Earth for long. I'm not sure if Zen or its troops knew of Gordon and the Lambda team's plan at this point, as I don't see any way for them to possibly know this. Fighting his way through the alien ambushes, he comes across an old ICBM rocket storage area, which is in his way of getting to the Lambda complex.
You're heading for the Lambda complex, aren't you? I was heading there myself until I wound up here and, well, I simply lost my nerve. Take one look through that door and you'll see what I mean.
What this scientist means is that the only issue with going this way is that it's completely covered in trip mines and other high explosives. I've always wanted to know, who did this? Like, who spent their time setting up these mines? I know it's for gameplay reasons, but lore-wise, was this a Marine trying to be funny? Or was this Black Mesa's last attempt at ensuring no one touched their ICBMs? It's silly, but it does make for a good puzzle. It's at some point during this time that a new foe comes into the mix. While not as high in numbers as Zen, a small alien race in similar situations to the Zenians makes their appearance on Earth, seeking refuge. These aliens are known as Race X, a still relatively unknown species, unknown to even Black Mesa's questionable ethics team. They appear similar in style to some of Zen's residents, perhaps coming from the same area in the universe as some Zenians, but Race X's presence were overshadowed by Zen's presence, given their smaller numbers. I wish to go further into my thoughts on Race X, perhaps in another video, as they're quite lazily plopped into the story in my opinion, but that's for another time. The situation outside of Black Mesa is also beginning to look pretty grim, with the aliens now pouring into neighboring towns and cities, and now completely overwhelming those who are still stationed. And back within the facility, the aliens are now overwhelming the remaining Marine Corps even further than they already have been doing, forcing the government's hand into withdrawing all ground forces, excluding the Black Ops. Which leads us into Gordon's fight towards the Lambda complex, coming across a security lockup filled to the brim with military-grade hardware, to MP5s and M203s to Spaz 12s. But he knows he can't stay long, so he continues forward, going through a landing pad somewhere within the motor pool, where an Osprey makes a last-ditch attempt to ambush him, which, as their track record showed, wasn't in the Marines' favor. The further Gordon goes, the more desperate his opposition gets. The Marines are being spread thin, and they begin panicking, with the remaining squads begging for help over the radios, but no backup can arrive.
Any station, this is Echo 5 Bravo. Are there any air assets able to provide support in Sector 8? Is anyone reading this? Thunderclap, this is Echo 5 Yankee. We need fire support. How copy? This is Thunderclap 1, no longer in a position to assist. We're moving to LZ Finch. The hell you say? push out to the nearest LZ and await further instruction. Any station, this is Goose 4. I have 16 wounded, 7 dead at LZ Sparrow. We have multiple X-rays all around us. We cannot take off. We are grounded. Is anyone there? We need support now.
The Zen aliens seem to be alright though. Albuquerque and Santa Fe slowly become micro war zones of their own, with the Zanian numbers increasing each minute, and with the overwhelmed forces mentioned prior, it's getting harder and harder to keep the peace, and now that the remaining local populace knows of the alien invasion, the panic would quadruple in size. But I should mention it most likely at this time did not reach the evacuation areas, just within the local area. But that wouldn't last long. Reaching the outskirts of the Lambda complex, Gordon witnesses an entire Marine squad get destroyed by a Zanian airstrike, which he is stuck in the crossfire of, causing him to flee into a wrecked building, where he is harassed by the remaining sniper team there, hoping to do him in before they escape. But this doesn't happen, and thus he continues forward, witnessing the pain and the destruction around him, which leads him into a hangar in Black-Mesa's air control, where he meets, quote, the only guy for about half a mile of Lambda access. Shepard, on the other hand, at this time is traversing through the Black-Mesa transit system, where he hopes to reach his evac near the same area. While the group of Marines discuss the nature of their evacuation, Gordon sneaks past, escorting the security guard through the midst of the battle, where they successfully reach the Lambda sector checkpoint, but sadly, only Gordon gets to celebrate this victory.
Oh, that'll get your heart pumping. I tell you what, that could have been a lot worse.
The fuck you must die!
It's at this time, given the situation within and outside of Black Mesa, with the human resources being exhausted, and with the public now aware of the alien invasion, as well as the aliens slowly beginning to breach the evacuation zones, the government at between 6 and half 6 released the third and final emergency alert that we know of, informing the populace of the situation in its entirety without sugarcoating it.
Message is transmitted at the request of the United States Department of Defense. This is not a test. Today at 4:16 p.m. Mountain Time, a state of emergency was declared by the President of the United States. An unknown hostile force was declared present at the Black Mesa Research Facility and several other locations in the surrounding areas of Black Mesa, New Mexico. As of 5:42 p.m. Mountain Time, the President has issued executive orders to withdraw all ground forces and begin immediate airstrikes over the Black Mesa Research Facility and surrounding areas beginning no later than this evening. For your own safety, an immediate evacuation order has been issued to the entire state of New Mexico. To all residents of New Mexico and surrounding areas, leave all your personal belongings. Take a battery-powered radio and only essential supplies with you. Do not remain in your homes. Seek shelter at your nearest militarized zone outside the state of New Mexico and await further instructions. If you cannot find your nearest evacuation route, seek assistance from local authorities immediately. If you have military training, firearms training, or any similar weapons training, contact your nearest military officer immediately. Stay tuned to frequency 740 AM for further updates on this emergency.
There's no point in hiding the truth any further. Aliens are indeed present at Black Mesa, and now the entire state must be evacuated, including those who think they can wait it out. I have my whole life ahead of me! No you don't, pal. The aliens are coming. News channels explode into hysterics, and not just in America, but around the world. This nuclear disaster somehow escalated into a full-blown alien invasion. How could this happen? Word of government cover-ups would quickly begin to circulate, as how did no one in Black Mesa tell the rest of the world that this was happening? But given their current situation, no one in government could really discuss this matter at the time. Many people outside of New Mexico spread their fears and thoughts on the incident, some condemning the government for not speaking out on the matter sooner, with many distrusting them revolving the nuclear disaster excuse, as the headlines hit every major newspaper and site they would have to answer soon. Black Mesa's administrator and director, Dr. Wallace Breen, also began to receive heavy scrutiny from the media, as he never gave a direct statement on the incident at that time, as he was presumably evacuated immediately when shit hit the fan. Was he aware that this would happen? Although no one besides Black Mesa personnel could know this, it was Dr. Breen who decided to up the anti-mass spectrometer's power above 100%. So perhaps he knew that this was to come. Perhaps someone told him. Woo! The government's main focus past this point was still the complete destruction of Black Mesa, since that's where all the aliens were coming from. The Hecou's new objective was to help out outside of Black Mesa with the total evacuation of New Mexico, alongside the National Guard. But a good portion of the Marines' forces were still stranded within Black Mesa, with their own evacuations from the facility slowing to a crawl as the rest of New Mexico went up in flames. Back within the facility, Gordon goes through the Lambda complex's entry tunnel, where he sees Black Mesa personnel, the Marines, and aliens all dying around him, as if it was a freeway battle between each side. But he can't get distracted, so he moves forward, where he approaches a T-junction within the tunnel. He sees two Marines setting up an ambush for something, but he can't see what it is. As he moves closer, the Marines begin screaming. A Garg has been revealed, and he's chasing Freeman relentlessly. Perhaps a relative of the one he killed the day prior, but there's no power stations nearby for Gordon to use to kill it. Is it over for our dear Freeman? At the same time, Adrian has finally reached the LZ where he hopes to evac. He sees a high-ranking member of his unit speaking to a Cooper over the radio. He says to forget about Freeman and to mark down any last errors he wishes to airstrike before he retreats. Coincidentally, this Cooper was stationed at the exact same location this Garg is chasing Gordon at. Therefore, upon Freeman reaching the end of this tunnel, he gets the airstriker's target device, which he uses to destroy the vile creature. #EpicStyle. Just a note regarding the Black Mesa source depiction of this call. Is this Marine in the background supposed to be Adrian? Have a listen.
Come in, Cooper. Do you copy?
Come in, Cooper. Do you copy?
Repeat. We are pulling out and commencing airstrikes. We'll leave without you, all right? Let's get going. Give us targets or get below. Over.
Repeat. We are pulling out and commencing airstrikes. Give us targets or get below.
Just a thought I had. Upon the defeat of the Gargantua, Gordon reaches the Lambda bunker's main door, where he continues forward into the sector. At the same time, back to Adrian's perspective, after greeting the Berate Marine, he proceeds down to the landing zone, but just as he reaches the door, it shuts in his face, thanks to the G-Man, who seems to have something planned for him. Shepard watches as his evacuation leaves without him, abandoning him within the Black Mesa complex. As I stated prior, since a good portion of the Marines never received their evac, it's left them open for attack, which the Black Ops took heavy advantage of, viewing them as failures in a way. They began open firing on any remaining Marine that they come across, as per their objectives.
Why do we always have to clean up a mess the grunts can't handle? Sooner or later, the grunts are gonna figure it out. You just keep your eyes open, there's still some targets running around out there.
They can't do that! That's illegal! Oh, I don't see anything like this ever happening in real life. Yeah, sure, buddy. I guess that's how scientists must have felt, all things considered. I take it to some Marines who were still present, they could have seen these Black Ops, those who survived their attacks, as possibly a foreign military or perhaps even Black Mesa staff, as the last thing you'd expect is your own government turning on you. This is exactly how the scientists must have felt. But to those Marines who have woken up and found out the truth, they knew their government betrayed them, and they were deemed expendable. It is so over, Hecou bros. I feel I should mention how this choice to eliminate their own troops doesn't help on anything in my opinion. I'm guessing it's simply because they got in their way or had seen too much, but at that point, who in New Mexico hadn't seen all the aliens? I'm guessing they didn't want anyone to see them blow up Black Mesa or something, but still, very unnecessary move on the CIA's part. What more do you expect from a filthy glowy? Outside of Black Mesa, things are only getting worse with even more aliens now attacking. It's almost like these things were being made in a factory or something, with the amount that's pouring out of these portals. The borders in between the neighboring states are also completely overwhelmed with the 1.8 million New Mexican residents trying to evac. The government would have to send in more resources into the neighboring states, as well as having allies to the United States such as Canada or the United Kingdom send foreign aid to help with the ongoing invasion, despite the controversy surrounding the cover-ups. Within Sector F of Black Mesa, Gordon hears a Marines radio broadcast informing any units still on the ground that if they don't reach their evac in time, they will be left behind.
Forget about Freeman! We are cutting our losses and pulling out! Anyone that's down there now is on his own repeat! If you aren't already, what? Oh shit!
Kind of unrealistic given the Marines' no man left behind principle, but I don't think that applies in this context. It really confirms my thoughts of the Marines just being expendable at this point, given the fact that they're actively being bombed by their own side. That, or given how much of a clusterfuck it's become, they either didn't care or weren't even aware of those Marines present, or those were Black Op mortars. Damn glowies. Gordon goes through a parking area within Sector F, which is swarming with Xenian resistance, before diving deep into Sector F's sewage area, where he finds a squad of Marines taking up refuge, perhaps taking shelter from the airstrikes, but whatever they're there for, they're no match for Gordon. Upon reaching the surface once more, just outside the Lambda complex's main entrance, Gordon observes a convoy attempting to flee, but once again is destroyed in an alien airstrike. The survivors of the convoy notice Freeman's arrival, and make one last attempt at stopping the Freeman where he stands. It's amazing to think why they even still bothered at this point. There was no chance of taking this guy down. He's wiped hundreds of these guys already. So at this point, the Marines completely forget about Freeman, focusing on their own survival now. There would still be a few who think they had a chance to get him, but now that he's inside the Lambda complex, it doesn't even matter anymore. Their last interaction with Gordon was one they hadn't even planned. It was just a coincidence that they crossed paths. A few of the Marines attempted to take shelter within Sector F, where they hoped to wait out the catastrophe, only to be ambushed by the Xenians, who were also trying to take refuge there. But then both sides were bodied by the good doctor. I hate having to repeat myself constantly, but it's really apparent how fucked these Marines actually are. Those who are left behind, I mean. We see their struggle to survive throughout Half-Life and Opposing Force, with not only alien resistance, but their own government and even the remaining Black Mesa personnel, causing them issues in the final stages of the Black Mesa incident. It's not known the amount of Marines left to die, but considering how much Marines we see throughout the final chapters as well as in Opposing Force, there's evidently quite a lot still remaining. The average Marine regiment count is between 2,000 and 3,000 Marine troops, so let's say that a good few hundred were left behind, with even more killed in action. The Black Ops also at this hour begin making moves within Sector F, potentially trying to breach into the Lambda complex, perhaps leave no stone unturned and maybe even to kill Gordon while they're at it. They infiltrated through a materials transport bay in between Sector E and Sector F, and ambushed Gordon within one of the Lambda complex's many materials storage areas, but given the presence of said Gordon Freeman, they wouldn't get too far into the sector. This scuffle between Gordon and the Black Ops was the government's last attempt to stop him, if you don't count Adrian breaching the Lambda complex later in the day, I mean, since he was technically a rogue element at that point. Past this, the government had no insight to what Gordon was up to or even where to find him, since the Lambda complex was so secure. Upon noticing the acts of violence against his unit, Adrian fights back against the Black Ops forces, where he stops them from planting a nuclear device in an unspecified rocket silo area near the Sector E and Sector F transport bay I mentioned prior, which he continued forward into, fighting more Black Ops while he does. He learns from speaking to a corpse man in his unit that they're planning on hitching an evac within the Lambda complex. He also states that he could probably get a shot on Freeman on his way out. Yeah, good luck on that one, buddy. It would be an hour or so before Gordon reaches the main teleportation labs within the Lambda complex, where the team president prepares to send Gordon into the Zen border world. So scary. Prior to this, Gordon's journey consisted of flooding the Lambda core and restoring the teleporter's power. Pretty straightforward. Interesting subject to bring up here is the Lambda team's opinion on Gordon. Now, a wee side note to mention before I continue, this is Black-Mesa Source, a fan remake of Half-Life, so their opinions on Gordon may not be 100% accurate to the lore. Half of the Lambda team are honored to meet Gordon, while others are either too tired or too exhausted to even entertain the idea of speaking to him.
Dr. Freeman, it really is quite an honor, but I'm sure you understand this is no time to be making conversation.
And a few others, such as one scientist in particular, absolutely hate Gordon's guts for causing the resonance cascade, solely blaming him for the incident.
Don't expect any glowing praise from me, Freeman. I'm not exactly thrilled to be in this situation. Gordon, I've been awake for God knows how long trying to fix your mistake. I'm sure you could understand that I don't wish to speak with you right now.
And to an extent, Dr. Keller and Dr. Breen, for exceeding the anti-mass spectrometer's power.
Oh, we'll just lower the dampening field and raise the capacitors. That's a grand idea. Nothing could possibly go wrong.
Throughout the video, I've discussed the government's reaction to Gordon, but I never felt it necessary to mention the scientist's opinion on him. It's not known if any other scientist blames Gordon for what happened, but the fact that this scientist in particular knows of Gordon's doing, despite being in different departments, means that Gordon's actions, while unintentional, did spread to the rest of his colleagues, which in turn would then spread to the general populace, which is why so many civilians know of Gordon during the events of the sequel. That or Eli sat them down by a fireplace and told them Gordon Freeman stories. But to that extent also, the last time Eli spoke to Gordon was in Sector C, so the fact that even Eli knows of Gordon's heroic journey confirms the thought that the news of Gordon's actions spread far and wide. If you take into consideration about what I said regarding Black-Mesa's security system still being operational, Gordon's journey was definitely viewed by the remaining staff members. What confirms this was back in apprehension, when the scientist that I mentioned prior tells Gordon that they've been tracking his progress through the Black-Mesa security system. Pretty neat. During Gordon and the Lambda team's preparation, Adrian finally makes his way into Sector F proper, accessing the Lambda complex through a transport line. The Lambda team begin warming up their major teleportation device. This device was designed based off prior teleporting technology to accurately pinpoint teleporting destinations within Zen, which prior teleporters struggle doing. Try saying that 5 times. Because of this, the device required a lot of power to work, hence the Lambda reactor. As the device warmed up, sensing the danger, the Zen forces triangulate upon the scene, teleporting in alien controllers, the controllers in question being the ones who are controlling the Vortigons. Using a multitude of Black Mesa weaponry against them, Gordon fends off against the opposing forces within the lab. But once again, speaking of the opposing forces, just as the teleporter is primed, Adrian enters the teleport room after getting into the lab through the ventilation, just as Gordon leaps into the portal, where he is teleported to Zen, where he must fight back against the Zenians on their own turf. After witnessing this, Adrian panics as I don't imagine he expected to see this display of sci-fi bullshit. He runs into the lab, shooting down controllers as he does, and as the lab collapses in on itself, he leaps into a portal caused by the destruction. He is then himself teleported into Zen, which he must escape from if he wishes to survive. Now, I want to mention the possibility of time dilation during Gordon, and to extend Adrian's journey through the Zen dimension. For those unaware, time dilation is when time moves differently depending on where someone is. In this instance, Earth and Zen. For the glowing brain geniuses among us, Earth is where we live, and Zen being far, far away in between different dimensions. It may feel like a few minutes on Zen, but in reality it could be hours or even days back on Earth, which is why even if Gordon defeated the Nihilants at the end of Half-Life within just a day or so, back on Earth it could have been a week or a month maybe, which is why the aliens continue to attack even after Black Mesa, spoiler alert, is destroyed at the end of opposing force, which would lead into more portal storms and the eventual invasion from the Combine. A perfect example of what time dilation is for those who are still confused. In the film Interstellar, in particular the scene on Miller's planet, a planet millions and millions of light years away from Earth, every tick in the ambience, which is every 1.25 seconds, is equivalent to one entire day back on Earth. So each time you hear that tick, an entire day has passed. For instance, the further away you are from Earth's gravitational field, the more it'll affect time. And since Miller's planet is orbiting around a black hole, which obviously has a stronger gravitational pull than Earth does, to anyone on Earth, you are slowed in time, but to you, everything is fine. I'm not a nerd, by the way. Einstein said this. It's true because he worked at Black-Mesa. Now, for the Zen dimension, despite technically being a separate plane of existence altogether, but still accessible to our dimension, it's situated so far away from Earth that just like Miller's planet, time dilation would most likely still occur, if that makes any sense. Explained in Fortnite terms, Gordon going to Zen is like jumping into a 0-point rift, where time moves slower, so even if he's only gone for one match, weeks could pass on the Fortnite island, which is why the Husks or something kept attacking after he got a Vic-Roy. I wrote that in the script. I actually wrote that in the script. But now that I mention this, Barney was in Zen for a good couple of hours or so perhaps I'm just looking way too deep into this, but it's something I felt like I should at least attempt to explain. If you think about it though, it could mean that Zen isn't as far as we thought it was, and maybe only minutes or hours pass each time. I'd like to know your thoughts on this. Yes, your thoughts. Tell me what you think below. Upon returning to Earth, which given what I've discussed regarding the time dilation, and since Adrian was only in Zen for a good 5 or so minutes, not a lot of time would have passed back on Earth. Realistically, if only a few minutes or hours pass per minute in Zen, I'd say around half an hour or so has passed, meaning it would be around 10 PM at this point. Adrian finds himself within an underwater research lab, where they study aquatic beings such as the ichthyosaurs, and where they also had, similar to the Lambda complex, local teleportation devices, but in very early stages. At this point as well, the Race X numbers would rise within the more hidden areas of the facility, as the Xenians were a huge threat to them, especially at this time since the main force of Xenians was alien grunts and Vortigons. It's also shown that this lab, or rather the scientist that's trapped in this lab, isn't aware of the Marines' objectives, but to be fair, neither is Adrian. They're both blissfully unaware of the true scope of the Black-Mesa incident. This poor scientist was probably stuck in that lab for days. He only got himself trapped in that teleporter recently, however, as a way to escape the Race X pit drones that killed his buddy over there. Now, it's quite hard for me to say on what happens outside of this time, since at this point of the timeline, the only thing that we have to work with is Adrian's perspective, and he's deep inside that underwater laboratory. I never like improvising or relying too much on fan-made content, but let's be fair here. I've done that quite a lot in this video already, so I don't think that even matters anymore. I imagine throughout the night it would still just be panic within the neighboring states, as New Mexico continues to go up in flames, with the aliens still attacking anywhere they go. Throughout the night, it was just constant urban warfare within New Mexico against the aliens. Urban warfare? Finally! A proper use for the Houge's urban M81! The Xenians were absolutely everywhere, and with every portal storm that came by, more would just spill out. But since the majority of civilians were already evacuated at this point, the Marines and the National Guard could focus completely on these new arriving aliens, but they would still experience heavy losses. The small pockets of people I mentioned prior would have to take up arms or else they would perish alongside them. For those who refused to leave, they would quickly understand why they should have left when the evacuations first came down, with the streets below them being filled with death and violence, some of which an ordinary human should never see. Seeing your loved ones being turned into mindless beasts by head crabs, your closest friends being zapped by a rampaging Vortigon, or your colleagues being trampled to death by a raging Garg. How would you react in this scenario? A lot of these people would end up dead or would just cave in and leave. If they were still able to, I mean. The airstrikes would have to be divided from Black-Mesa to provide assistance for the remaining ground forces. But with every hour, the portals grew larger and larger. Jumping forward back to Black Mesa, after escaping both the underwater lab and Black Mesa's biodome, and after defeating the pitworm, who had just decimated a squad of Marines prior.
X-Ray Zulu, are you there? We need backup in the waste sector. Some sort of water creature. Tower and Eddie are down and I've lost contact with the rest of the squad. We need backup now! Now, damn it, now!
Adrian continues forward into the facility, where he is able to reach the surface once more, and at around 5 in the morning, he breathes in the New Mexico air again. You know, it's funny. It smells like death and destruction out here. On the surface, the airstrikes have calmed down, most likely due to them being spread apart to handle the ever-growing alien attack throughout the state. This has led the Black Ops to make more of an appearance above ground, as well as allowing the Xenians, as well as the Race X, to flourish on the surface once more, with the three sides clashing throughout the motor pool, with Adrian, his remaining unit, and the remaining BMRF personnel, which at this point wasn't a lot, in the middle of all of it. The Black Ops also began planting the thermonuclear bombs properly throughout the entire facility, with only some locations remaining, but to get there, they'd need to clear the way for the trucks containing the warheads to get through. Within Sector G, Adrian finds a group of Marines who are trying to get through to the Hydro Dam in order to defeat a Gargantua, who is taking up refuge on top of the dam. Whether they were trying to reach the ABR labs or find an alternate route is unknown, but wherever they were planning to go, this Garg was on the goal line. But to get there, they would have to fight through the Black Ops present, who of which has rigged the place with explosives. As the fighting continues, the Black Ops mortar strike the entire area, detonating the explosives and the trip mines, and potentially wiping out some of Adrian's team. Adrian retreats into Sector G's storage facilities, coming across countless battles between each of the opposing forces, as well as encountering various bizarre new aliens, such as the Voltigors, deep within the Hydro Dam. Re-reaching the surface sometime later, Adrian and his team must fight their way back through the Sector G motor pool area, where the Race X have taken up the position after Adrian wiped the Black Ops squad there prior. Back within the Hydro Dam, the remaining Marine squad present managed to trap the Garg into position in the middle of the dam, and with a tiny little nudge from Adrian, they blow the thing sky high. But this is just a short victory in the grand scheme of the Black-Mesa incident. The destruction of the dam would also most likely cause the remaining power throughout the facility to begin to cease. But going back to when Gordon reactivated it the day prior, it probably didn't make much of a difference, given the existence of the backup generators and such. A skirmish between the remaining Marine forces and the Black Ops began outside of the motor pool, nearby to a parking garage, where the Marines, seeing the Black Ops' presence, hoped they could ambush them. Little did they know, this was one of the warhead targets, and inside this garage laid a truck carrying a thermonuclear device. Seeing the resistance, the Black Ops began mortar firing and airstriking the advancing Marines, killing each of them, besides Corporal Shepard, of course, who manages to slip past into the ruined Black Mesa areas. Fighting through the Xenians, the Race X, and the Black Ops, Adrian manages to squeeze his way into this parking garage, where the Black Ops quickly follow behind before he can reach the Warheads team. Adrian learns from a security guard that the Black Ops are indeed planting warheads, which, if we remember, he first saw it back in the previous day. Now, Adrian, and I should also mention the security guard too, most likely don't know that there are other bombs besides these two, and hell, neither do we really, but do you expect only 2 bombs to completely destroy such a large facility? I don't think so. If what I've said is true, there are several throughout Black Mesa, perhaps one in every sector. Let me know your thoughts on that, as it's quite an interesting thing to think about. The Black Ops cannot hold a candle up to this Crayon Eater, as he rips through their forces. He's able to disarm this one nuke, most likely in order to give him and his remaining team time to escape, even if it is just one, as any little helps. Another guard who seems to be blissfully unaware of the Marines' objectives, but seems to be well aware of what the Black Ops are doing, tells Adrian that at this point, the last possible exit through the facility is through this storage warehouse, but the Black Ops have been using it as a staging area, perhaps to get out of there ASAP before the bombs went off. But silly Black Ops, Adrian just disarmed that bomb. You have nothing to... Oh. No matter what, even if it causes the death of any government agent still in the facility, in this case Adrian, these bombs must go off. In the government's eyes, it's the only way to stop these aliens, but in the eyes of the mysterious G-Man we see here, it's a necessary event for him and his employer's plans, whatever those plans could be. But no matter the reason, Adrian has to get out of there, and fast. And given what the security guard says, his only way out from here is through the storage warehouse, which he continues into. I've not really said much about the remaining Black-Mesa staff at this point, as there's not much I can really say regarding that, since at this point most of them are just dead or have already left the facility. But it wouldn't really matter after all of this, given how the majority of the thermonuclear bombs have been armed and are ready to go. I'd like to take a moment to think about all the scientists that are still in Black-Mesa, the Lambda team, the medical ward, that one random scientist in the underwater lab. None of these people would even know what was coming. Perhaps maybe the Lambda complex would be fine, for now at least, given the fact that the government never fully infiltrated into it. But even if that was the case, how would they even survive past that? Given what we know of what happens to the world post-resonance cascade, I'd imagine some would have felt better off in Black-Mesa during its final hours. As dark as that may sound, I'd rather be obliterated in a nuclear explosion than being turned into a stalker. Leaving this world, it isn't as scary as it sounds. Shut up. With the Black Ops and remaining Heku falling back, and with the Xenians moving elsewhere throughout the state, the Race X takes this opportunity to fully move into Black Mesa, and at this time, they attempt to send in their terraforming monstrosity known as a gene worm, and it's the nastiest looking thing yet, and its primary objective in life was to settle down somewhere by any means. Perhaps their previous home got a knock on the door from the bill collector. Hence why they're using the Xenians' attack as an excuse to move in. Squatters' rights after all! The Black Ops, detecting an intruder within the warehouse, scramble towards Adrian's location where they hope to prevent him from escaping, and ensure that they can escape. If I'm honest, I'm not entirely sure where this escape path is, but if I can take a guess, I'd imagine it's wherever these shipments and containers come from. Perhaps a delivery route. Maybe it connects to Black Mesa's freight yard in a way, as the line it's connected to connects to Sector G, which is nearby to where this location is. Since the freight yard can lead outside the facility, this would make sense for where the Black Ops intend to exfiltrate from. Well, this team in particular, I mean. Outside of Black Mesa, with heavy casualties throughout the entire state, mostly around the Black Mesa area, I'd imagine the government would deploy as much soldiers as they can, most likely sending in the army to assist the Marine Corps and the National Guard. If they haven't already, I mean, it makes sense for this type of situation. I imagine the Xenians' numbers must have peaked around this time, as I imagine the Nyland would stop sending in new troops and personally assign his newly made alien soldiers to stop Gordon, wherever he may be at this rate. Adrian, after defeating the Black Ops team within the warehouse, approaches a security guard, which tells him that there's something coming through down below, something nasty. He's meaning the gene worm. It's revealed that during their escape attempt, one of the last remaining squad Marines in Black Mesa encountered the beast mid-teleportation into the facility. According to the security guard, that's the last he heard from them. Adrian understands what he must do. He must destroy this alien before it kills any more of his buddies. Elsewhere in Black Mesa, the remaining vehicles and aircraft begin to leave the area, mostly being the other Black Ops teams who are exfiltrating the site, meaning that Adrian doesn't have long left, so upon entering the deeper areas of this warehouse, which for some reason has mounted guns in it, the gene worm shows itself to Adrian, where the two battle it out. Sirens blare throughout Black Mesa as the remaining aircraft finally leave the airspace. Anyone left alive to still hear these alarms better get going before it's too late. But to be honest, if they are hearing these sirens, it's most likely already too late for them. This is the last hour of the Black Mesa incident. This is what it's all come down to. The government authorizes the detonation of each warhead throughout the facility, which they hoped would destroy the remaining aliens and portal storms. Just as Adrian launches the final blow into the gene worm, causing it to implode in on itself, just as Black Mesa begins to be engulfed in a fiery Armageddon, he is pulled out last minute by the mysterious G-Man aboard a V-22, where he is shown the facility engulfed in hellfire before he's then put into stasis indefinitely. The explosion can be seen, felt, and heard for miles. The shockwave alone would have reached Albuquerque and Santa Fe. But besides the actual facility itself, the alien numbers didn't cease, and instead, the portals grew larger and larger, now engulfing the entire state. To the government, the destruction of Black Mesa felt like a win, a proper step in the right direction. And with seemingly the alien invasion thinning, only because they've spread it out more, they assume it's over. All they would have to do is kill off the remaining aliens in New Mexico. Might work. The reactions worldwide would be intense to say the least. The last time a nuclear bomb was used in a war was back in 1945. That's if the government didn't feed more lies regarding it. They most likely told a different story to the media, but if they had already lied about the aliens, what more could they plausibly lie about? But regardless of how it was destroyed, the fact that the portal storms continued to happen, even after the fact, caused concern to officials, as if they destroyed the source of the aliens, why are the aliens still affecting the weather and the environment?
The President of the United States addressed the nation yesterday, confirming that the severe weather events precipitating the presence of these violent and dangerous creatures were indeed a result of the disaster at the Black Mesa Research Facility in New Mexico. Portal storms continue to appear in more and more locations globally. Much of the world's military stands at attention, with some nations even arming their citizens in anticipation of an influx of aggressive life forms.
So far, the Xenians had terrorized the New Mexico area, but now some would be going past that into Arizona, Utah, Colorado, Texas, a small bit of Oklahoma, and into Mexico. Going back to what I said regarding the foreign aid, armed forces from neighboring countries such as Canada and Mexico would send in their own troops to assist, with the Mexican army now having to fight the Xenians in their own land. The United Kingdom and other NATO allies would also send in their own militaries in order to assist with the ever-growing alien populace. As while the US Army and the Standard Marine Corps were holding fine, the New Mexican National Guard as well as the Marine Corps' Hazardous Environment Combat Unit were struggling within New Mexico post-bombing of Black Mesa. During this whole aftermath, media channels across the world could continue to pry into Dr. Wallace Breen, with him most likely having to appear before trial, as how could the CEO of Black Mesa get away with all of this scot-free? After all, it was Black Mesa's fault that the aliens had shown up. Breen would end up admitting that Black Mesa was fully aware of the alien existence this entire time, but as Breen does, he downplayed his involvement, shifting the blame onto the anomalous materials and Lambda teams. And for some reason, a large majority believed him, which is most likely related to the G-Man's deal with Dr. Breen, which promised him power.
I had at many points ordered our applied physics research teams to cease all experimentation regarding unstable portal technology. However, several departments continued clandestine research against my instructions. It will shock many to know that the most classified experiments at Black Mesa, largely carried out prior to my tenure, had already taught us of the existence of these creatures. As a result, I was aware of the acute danger they posed. With respect to my late colleagues in the executive department, I do regret that their actions ultimately hamstrung my effectiveness to monitor and block dangerous experiments being carried out by the Anomalous Materials Research Team.
Going back to what I said prior, the president would also receive criticism from media outlets as to the potential government cover-up that took place, as despite their efforts, the word would spread, given the fact that a small portion of Black Mesa's staff escaped during the disaster. Since the immediate threat, in quotations, was dealt with, the government would be able to quell these concerns by denying them full-heartedly, despite what any survivors would say. As expected, this would spark riots and protests. Since the full force of the United States Armed Forces and their allies were focused on the remaining Xenians, no one tends to think about the Race X's involvement post Black Mesa and pre-7 Hour War. I would definitely like to go over this in more detail in a separate Race X centered video, like I had mentioned earlier, but it's most likely since Race X hadn't made that big of a move on Earth and had never left Black Mesa's grounds, that we know of, and given how Adrian killed the gene worm and destroyed its portal, I don't imagine any remaining Race X would be much of a threat, given how most of those who were left behind would be cooked alive by a thermonuclear bomb. Those who did escape would either die to the Xenians or whatever armed human they stumbled across. Now, I'm not implying Race X or their ability to teleport was completely wiped out. I'm just meaning that the fact that there was little to no chance to get comfortable on Earth, Race X, upon the destruction of their quote-unquote leader and Black Mesa, they would most likely, if they could, retreat back into their homeworld, where the bill collector would be waiting. Depending on how long you reckon Gordon would be in Zen for, given the whole time dilation thing, it could be a few days or even weeks back on Earth before Gordon defeats the Nihilanth. Throughout those days, the portals would only grow larger. Each hour they would take over a new town, pushing the armed forces back each time. But this isn't right. We destroyed Black Mesa. How are these portals not closing? If you were paying attention, you'd remember that the only thing keeping these portals open is the Nihilanth himself. So even if the original source, that being Black Mesa,
I understood that reference,
was destroyed, the fact that the Nihilanth is still alive means that even if the aliens peaked a day prior, they wouldn't stop coming until the Nihilanth himself is killed. So in the meantime, more and more land would be lost to the portal storms, with Arizona, Utah, Colorado, Texas, Oklahoma, and parts of Mexico slowly succumbing to the aliens' advances. The borders across the United States, Canada, and Mexico would shut indefinitely. I'm meaning the ones that weren't already shut. And air travel was restricted to only government aircraft. The president would also most likely not be in Washington anymore, but instead be aboard Air Force One, where he could remain safely in control of the situation. The next few days would remain mostly the same, alien positions expanding, armed forces retreating, cities and towns lost, foreign aid and military sent in for help, more citizens being rushed out of their homes, officials trying to keep the population calm, civil unrest, protests, riots, all of the sorts. Soon, a majority of the southwest United States would fall to the Xenians, which despite the resistance and the support, they were no match for these creatures. Towns and cities would be full of headcrab zombies, bull squids, hound eyes, alien grunts, and vortigons, with no sign of stopping. Each hour, more stations would be overrun, and more people misplaced. Within Zen, which for Gordon would have been around a day or so since he left Black Mesa, the Lambda team caches are running low, but he doesn't give up. He can't give up. He faces against the Nihilanth one-on-one. With help from supply caches left behind, he is able to defeat the Nihilanth, destroying his rule over Zen and closing the portals throughout Earth. For the people back on Earth, it's as if the Xenians' numbers began to drop as they seemingly stopped being reinforced, and the human resistance began taking back more land from the invaders. But despite their efforts, New Mexico and other areas in the southwest were left in ruins. It would most likely take them a good few years just to get the Xenian growths out, let alone rebuild the entire state. But regardless of how long it would take to rebuild, the surviving Black Mesa staff would pick up on the fact that this was Gordon's doing. He defeated the evil Nihilanth, saving humanity. For the government, they were shown to be weak, covering up an incident like this, and then facing the near extinction of their own country to an alien race they brought in the first place. But despite all of that, for the people, for humanity it was a victory. Word of the man with the crowbar who saved the world from the Xenians during the Black Mesa incident would spread from the Black Mesa staff who survived, This one free man. But this victory was short-lived. Shortly after things started to look a little better, the portals had reopened, but this time it wasn't just dumb creatures that were made in a factory. No, it was even worse. It was smart creatures that were made in a factory. The Universal Union had arrived on Earth, drawn by the invasion, and seizing the opportunity to invade once the island fell, crippling the remaining forces in a mere 7 hours, completely decimating anyone they came across, human or Xenian. These aliens that people labeled the Combine weren't no pencil pushers, and it would take a lot more than a few crayon eaters to stop them. They had completely flooded Earth, putting the governments throughout the world under fire. The first to go was unfortunately the United States, with the already crippled government falling to these Combines in the first few hours. People around the world were shocked and confused as these weren't the same dumb Zen beings that were causing issues prior. These aliens were smart, they knew who to target and when, focusing the first of their attacks on military bases worldwide. News and media channels would halt, replaced with emergency broadcasts and informational screens. This had went from a 10 to a 100 in no time at all. People thought after the Xenians slowed their advances, humanity would be spared. But with these new aliens replacing the Xenians, absolutely no one was safe. The other countries besides America went from relative peace, watching the invasion from the sidelines, to suddenly having their entire armed forces and resistance wiped out in an instant. It was only on the last hour that Dr. Wallace Breen, given his deal with the G-Man, had arranged a peace treaty with the Combine. Breen was able to commune with these new arriving aliens, where he asked for Earth's survival, in exchange for their greatest minds and collaboration. His idea was if they could combine, get it? Their species as one, Earth and humanity may live to see another day. The Union agreed, and 7 hours after they had arrived, the Combine appointed Breen as their new leader of Earth. The United Nations declared over every remaining radio station, TV channel, newspaper, or online site that the Earth has surrendered, and to welcome in their new benefactors. That day, billions lost their lives, and billions more would suffer in the coming years, as the Combine sucked their planet clean of resources. As Dr. Breen, under the Combine's control, begins reforming every major city on Earth into dense urban centers, as he puts it, in order to control the remaining survivors. Small pockets of resistance begin to form between humans and now the recently freed Vortigons, organized by surviving Black-Mesa staff Eli Vance and Dr. Kleiner. It was a dark time for humanity, but a slow light would emerge in the form of these rebels. It would only be a matter of time before the one free man returns, to save the Earth from alien oppression once more. The president, knowing the world has fallen, makes one last call to the people, which goes as followed.
My fellow Americans, as your president and commander-in-chief, it is with a heavy heart that I'm informing you that we have made a strategic decision to surrender to the alien invaders known as the Combine. Right now, this is the best chance for our survival as Americans and as humans. This has been the hardest decision of my life, and I did not do so lightly. As Americans, and indeed as human citizens, we have never willingly surrendered to oppression. And this very idea is anathema to our core values and everything we hold dear. Yet, the fact and hard truth remains that we lost this battle for now. And believe me, we will live to fight another day. We shall return. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Wow. So, oh my, so true. Absolute cinema. God bless America. So true, so true, so true.
Those things. The only thing we know for sure is those things are smarter.
Well, that was quite a long video, that one. You know, I started this right after the last major video, which was, wow, nearly 5 months ago. I'm just glad it's finally over, bro. I'm free! I'm free! I feel as if I've skimmed over quite a lot in some parts of this video, as either it was unimportant to the point I was trying to make, or there was little to no information on it. I had to rely a lot on fan-made content, as you probably could have seen. A big thanks and credits towards Epentibi and Macdrown for their news and media segment, as they really helped me fill in the blanks for a lot of this video. Now, realistically, I don't imagine the whole cover-up on top of a cover-up thing would ever happen on such a grand scale in real life. So throughout this video, you may have picked up on generic memes, SFM/Gmod posters, based around the Black-Mesa incident. The reason I mention these is not only because they line up with what I think in my video, but they are also the creator's own interpretation of how the Black-Mesa incident should have gone down, depicting the Marine Corps actually helping during the incident. Obviously, I never showed any of those specific images in my video, but regardless, he's actually made a huge compilation of it on his YouTube channel. If you're interested in a more realistic depiction of the Black-Mesa incident, I'd suggest checking it out. Now, I hope this video hasn't confused anyone. I don't even know myself if I fully understand what I'm saying half the time. Despite, being a Half-Life lore expert. Yep, that's me. I'm a bit half on half with the whole time dilation idea, as I don't imagine Valve or Gearbox ever considered that. But it's just something I thought would play a role in the Black-Mesa incident. Now, for the 7-hour war sequence, I didn't want to discuss too much on it, as I wanted to focus this video solely on the government's civilian responses on the Black-Mesa incident, the Xenian invasion, and the Race X invasion, alongside any other speculations that relate to that. I just felt I should mention it, as it happens shortly after the Xenians stopped their attack. Also, a big thanks to all the other artists and creators whose art I have stole throughout this video. I should have most of you credited throughout, but if I don't, please let me know. Besides that, I don't think I have much else to say. If you have any other ideas, or if you have criticism about my interpretations, drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them. I have a lot of videos planned for the future. Next one is going to be a detailed video on the HEV suits, so if you like the sound of that, stay tuned. Subscribe perhaps if you haven't. I'll know if you did or not. We have just reached 2 billion subscriber. Wow, I can't believe we got there so fast. And check out Half-Life Sleep Deprived on ModDB. If you missed the last video about it, it's my Half-Life mod I'm working on with our team, Nuclear Orange. Stay tuned for the media releases on it. Oh, also, this mod in the background is Herbicide, best mod ever by the way. After Hunt Down the Freeman, I mean, that's the best mod. Other than that, I'll see ya when I see ya.